Hey guys, so I just want to do a follow-up video about the Express Network utility, just to give you a better understanding of the true power of this software, this program. So I've connected to a different VPN for a different site. It's shown up as Ethernet 3 as my adapter. I've already input the correct username and password, so all the controllers should come in unlocked. So I'll go ahead and run the scan. And you can see pretty quickly that we've got a lot of controllers on this site, right? And this is the point, is that it cuts down the work when you are working with a lot of devices and a lot of controllers. Down the bottom, you might have already seen, we've got this information terminal that just sort of gives you the total number of devices found, as well as, and they were all authenticated, which is great. So this one's just turned up in red, and that tells me that it has failed to ping. So even while you're working on it, it's going to be checking these devices, making sure it can still communicate to it. And this one has dropped off for some reason. So it's always good to have a look down here at the information and see if there's anything unexpected that can help you figure out what you're doing is correct. All of these fields, hostname, IP, MAC address, Wi-Fi MAC, location description, can be sortable. So I always like to sort by IP address. And it should give you, so while it doesn't say the device here, it's actually stored in the host ID, the type of device that we're using. And then a little bit of the controller name will tell you a bit more about the function of what that controller does, and we have to manually fill that out. The location helps as well. When you're on site, you need to know how to get to something. The MAC address is obviously the hardware port that is connected to. Looks like this one's dropped off. Has the other one? Yeah, the other one's come back online. So just various little niggly network issues that could probably be solved by increasing the timeout of these info timeouts. Things of that nature. You've got a generatable report. That's the first function here. After you've found your devices, you can use the generator report. You can update the admin password. So you've got to put in the new password twice. I'll just put in the wrong password here. And update it. Hopefully these controllers should all lock up. Okay. So because I only had that device selected, that was the one where the admin password was updated. And I should probably change that back because I did not mean to do that. Where are we? FCU G8. FCU T802. This one here. So obviously this one updates the administrator password. Just set that back. On the right, you've got your jobs. So all these functions across the top here, when you enact them, they become jobs, and it will give you a status some jobs take longer than others, such as a firmware update or a GFX code update. Next is the backups. So you can take a full site backup very easily. It is just going to take quite a long time. You name the backup, choose your location for the backup, choose everything that you want out of the controller, and then click OK, which is very handy. Just a short, easy way to do a full site backup. Just saves you hours and hours of, work, basically. The date and time settings on the controller. Just selected the first controller here, chiller controls. It's taking some time to think about this. Yeah, so all of these things you could previously see inside the web browser view, and it's just making these settings in place on mass scale. So you can just make sure that they're all on the same time. As long as they all have their gateway correctly set, you can set them all to update their time automatically. So the reboot settings. Something else about this software is it will find controllers that have not yet been set to your current IP range. So obviously my IP has been set by the VPN to match the range, but if there was a controller on that network that did not match the range, it doesn't matter. It would still find it and display it to you, and then it would come up with, in the information section, this controller we cannot communicate to, and that's because your IP settings in a different subnet than the controller. Okay. Yeah, the reboot speaks for itself. You can reboot the controllers. You can update the users of the controllers. Client settings, server settings. The web server access will allow you to set the types of access that can be that this controller will be able to communicate to. I shouldn't have to say, but it's probably not a good idea to use HTTP anymore, because when you are logging into a site, you are basically using plain text across the network that you're using to log into that device. I mean, it's not too bad on a local network, but if anyone else is using that local network and perhaps looking at the packets across that network, then they will be able to see the username and password that you've logged in with, because that traffic will have been sent across that network. Update server is the firmware update. So this is where you would find your firmware that you have downloaded from the software center and update into the controller. All these firmwares here are, some of them are more up to date than others. It is good to get the latest firmware. It'll take a few hours and then just apply it across the board. And controllers do need to reboot when you do apply new firmware, so best for critical controllers to be done during after hours. The IP settings is another great configuration to set, because it's very intuitive. It's got its sort of unique thing where you can set the first one, and then you can set each remaining one after that at an increment value. So The first IP address would be this, the next one would be 12, 13, 14, 15, and so on and so forth, making it very easy for you to set or update IP addresses just so that they're non-clashing. Always good. Each of these controllers can use a Wi-Fi adapter, and you can set or make changes to that configuration in here. I'm not going to get into the Bluetooth. That's more to do with the sensors that connect to each controller. Your Bluetooth temperature, humidity sensors are very common these days. And, while we prefer wired sensors, it's a very good option in some instances. We've got our BACnet settings. So these are your device IDs, device host names, location, description. A lot of these fields are for your information purposes only. The device ID is obviously crucial for BACnet. You've got BACnet routing. Some controllers can act as a BACnet MSTP router, so serial to IP communications. A commissioning wizard, probably best done at the start rather than at the finish. Go through setting up the controller initially, loading the program for the first time. GFX program is what we'll get into later. You develop your GFX logic code and import that into the controller. There's a lot more options here than you might expect. We'll look at those when we get to the GFX. Envision is the native graphics on the controller. So each of these controllers can house, and by default they do house graphics. And I'll just show you what that looks like, because I don't think any of these have been deleted out of these projects. So I'm just going to right click, open in the web browser. And the other option is to upload an Envision project file. So I click on that. Yeah. Okay. So your two options for programs, GFX and Envision. Envision is the graphics side of it. Okay. Yep, so there's a project sitting inside this. If you would like to remove them, it's actually no problem and would probably reduce the resources used by the controller. It frees up, memory, RAM, as well as may remove some of the processing power for the CPU so that it focuses more on the program. So yeah, there's a default graphics on this controller, which is completely unused and unnecessary. It's just got system information, temperature information. If you leave the default program inside the controller, it would probably line up to give you all these values. Occupancy down the bottom. Not sure what this one is. So yeah. Yeah, so just to recap, it's a powerful engineering tool. You can assign configurations in mass, you can apply updates, you can find devices that are yet to be configured. Okay, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.